Well, thanks everyone for having me. My name's Jack Hidary, as you heard, and it's great to be back here. This is my third trip here in India this year alone. So it's great to spend a lot of time here, and every time I come for a few weeks and go around the country, and I'm able to visit so many startups and venture firms and academic institutions, and it's the vibrancy, the energy of this country is very palpable, very, very exciting. So it's a great time to be here, and it's a great time, I think, to share some of the thoughts that we're going to talk about today. I want to share a few thoughts, and then I think we're going to have a conversation, and then open it up as well to the whole group. So let me literally jump in. Okay, so moonshots. What comes to mind? Any words come to mind when people think of the word moonshot? What words may come to mind? What phrases, associations? What words come to mind? Anybody? Moon landing. Okay, right. So the first, well, not the first moonshot, but one of the moonshots was certainly going to the moon. JFK said, this guy right here, let's go to the moon. And at that time when he said it, did we know how to go to the moon? We did not know how to go to the moon. But there's a belief, sometimes in America, obviously, we're a bit crazy. We believe we can do things that we don't know how to do. And now that's infecting everyone, including here in India. So yes, moon landing. Other thoughts, phrases that come to mind with the word moonshot, please.
Yeah, same thing, like it's about waiting for something and know, at this point in time you know that it's
Right, right, right. Something that appears impossible. Maybe it's possible, we don't know, but appears impossible, exactly. So certainly there's risk associated with it, there's challenge. And so these are some of the things we associate with moonshots. So we're going to talk about why do we want to engage in moonshot thinking. And what I've now learned and concluded over now 15 years of engaging in moonshots, both for-profit, not-for-profit, in companies, outside of companies, big companies, small companies, all kinds of moonshots. We now have a body of data. We now have a set of best practices around this. I have now concluded that in this time, in this era, this moment, in terms of the nonlinear space that we're in, both in the Indian market for startups, as well as in the US and other places, we are literally faced with moonshot or destruction. So this is no longer about disruption. A lot of us have been talking about disruption for some time. This is about destruction. And this is the rewiring of our economies, the rewiring of how we do business, how we live, how we interact with each other, how communities are built. This is a very, very big deal. Well, the several practices we now know in terms of moonshot thinking apply to startups. The first is to make sure you're solving a really difficult problem. If you find yourself being commoditized, or there's so many Me Too's coming at you that now the press is now getting confused, the consumer's getting confused, and even if you know and your investors know that you're better than everybody else, that you have better tech or whatever it is, if the consumer and the media don't understand that, then it might as well doesn't exist. And the media, fortunately or unfortunately, often get confused. They'll see 4 or 5 companies that look somewhat similar and say, well, they're all the same. So it's really, really hard to explain to the media sometimes why you're so different. And so when I talk about solve a very hard problem, you may have started out solving a problem that you thought was pretty difficult, but now that there's 5 or 10 people doing that, you may have to go to a deeper level. You may have to say, you know what? Okay, we started out as, say, another Uber. We can't do that because Uber exists. Let's go maybe become an algorithm company that specializes in transportation algorithms, and we license our technology to Uber, bus companies, train companies, and others, as an example. We're going to get 10 PhDs on staff, and we're going to go deeper in tech than any one of them could because we're going to specialize in those algorithms. But we're not going to be the last mile. We're not going to be consumer-facing anymore. That's an example of a pivot that would allow you to solve a much deeper problem and probably get more funding because you're going to be the best at what you do. 10x and then 100x. This, we now understand, is critical to making sure you don't get swallowed up in the Me Too scenario, get swallowed up in the commoditization of these industries. We now understand when it comes to solving very difficult problems, often when you make the problem actually much worse, you can actually solve it in an easier way. And again, it sounds counterintuitive, but this turns out now again and again and again to be the case. When we said you have to go to 100 kilometers above the Earth, back and forth twice in 2 weeks, we got more innovation, more excitement than if we said, go 7 feet up and down. If we just said that, we wouldn't get anyone interested. So when we think about 10x and think about 100x, it's really pushing ourselves. And very often in the day-to-day, each of us here are running companies. He's like, Jack, how can you ask me to do this? I have customers right now. I have to get another round done. I have to get another VC round done. I have to do this. I have to hire somebody. I have to fire somebody. I have all these day-to-day things I have to take care of right now. What we find is that those teams that take the time, maybe it's once a week for 30 minutes, maybe it's once a month for a day, whatever works for your company, and you say, I'm going to take the time with my team to think about and challenge them to this 10x thinking, this pays back in huge dividends. Very often when we're hiring people as CEOs, as entrepreneurs, we look for people with some traditional key pedigrees. We say, well, this person's a programmer, okay, they worked at Google, they worked at this, okay, great, they did this, great, full stack developer, let's bring them aboard, whatever pedigree they have, let's do that. Well, we found more and more that that's actually not going to work, because the nimbleness that your companies need right now is so critical that you want to actually bias towards problem solving and less towards pedigree. Bias towards people who have faced massive challenges and work through them across a variety of sectors perhaps, not even in one sector, and bring them aboard to help you, rather than somebody who's gone deep for 30 years at General Electric and all they've done is GE for 30 years. So we're finding a lot of data around this in terms of unusual inputs into the team that normally we wouldn't say 5, 10 years ago would be valuable, we now understand are quite valuable. People say, well, Bitcoin, I can't use it here, I can't use it there, blah, blah, blah. But then you find what's called backdoors. In every type of innovation, whenever it's adopted, you often find backdoors. Gift is a backdoor. So with Gift, it's a company that allows you to buy gift cards to any one of 10,000 retailers using Bitcoin. Well, if I can buy a gift card using Bitcoin, that means I can use Bitcoin on any one of 10,000 retailers, even though these retailers have no idea that they now, quote, accept Bitcoin. Again, when thinking about 10x, if you're in any way related to the payment platform space or the payment space, you want to say to yourself, okay, is our trajectory, is our team, our trajectory, our space capsule geared up and enabled to achieve this $1 trillion opportunity? Because if it's not, you're going to get back into that slide I showed before, that crazy, chaotic slide of complete crowding. Now, I'm not just saying that you have to personally solve in your company the whole $1 trillion space, but the vision has to be there for how you're going to get there. Again, Uber didn't start with 250 cities. It started with 5. But the vision was there from the beginning to say, we're going to take on 250 different regulators at the same time. That was their particular moonshot. In the case of the payment space in India, this is bigger than that of Uber's entire opportunity set. This is 10 times as big as Uber's entire opportunity set. So this requires moonshot thinking. Don't look at Paytm and say, oh, Jack Ma just put in $575 million into that thing, and that's only for 25% of it. There's no opportunity for me. This is just the beginning. That's just a signal that it's time to start the moonshot thinking, not end the moonshot thinking. This is just the beginning. We talked a lot about, again, these moonshot kind of ideas, this moonshot thinking, this 10x thinking, this disruptive thinking, this destructive thinking. And it all comes down to the ultimate competition for these resources. Everyone in this room, starting a startup, running a startup, growing a startup, you need these kinds of resources. You want to go for partnerships. You want to make sure that the big companies out there know who you are and want to work with you and not your competitor. How do you do that? You're not going to do that with incremental thinking. You're not going to impress the media by saying, I'm a little better than that e-commerce startup, right? We talked about Bluestone there, selling jewelry online. So let's say 4 of us now start another Bluestone. We have a slightly better interface. We got a UX designer from Google. Woohoo! That's not going to work. You'd have to think about what's going to moonshot your Bluestone above what Bluestone's doing. So this is the kind of thinking that you need right now. And it's necessary now because, again, everyone has access to the kind of algorithmic resources I discussed, the kind of hosting resources, the kinds of other resources that we're talking about today. This is critical to making success right now. Today, it took about 45 years to get 3 billion people onto the internet. Of 7 billion people in the world, there's only 3 billion people right now connected on a regular basis to the internet. I believe that it's not going to take another 45 years to get the next 3 billion. Our calculations and our team indicate to us that will happen within 7 years, maybe 5 years. We're in a nonlinear moment. We're in a moment where things are not going to take as long in the future as they took in the past. So now again, moonshot thinking. When you say, okay, I'm a startup, I'm serving 2 million people right now with whatever my service is, that's out of 3 billion. Okay, who's positioned well for the next 3 billion? Is Amazon the best one positioned to service the next 3 billion? Is Amazon the best one to understand that the next 3 billion are coming from countries like India, like African countries, other Southeast Asian countries? That's where the next 3 billion is coming. So just because someone is well positioned for the first 3 billion, it doesn't mean they're well positioned for the next 3 billion. And so before people give up and say, I can't, the incumbents are too big. It's too magnificent an issue to try to compete with these guys. Well, guess what? Don't compete with them. Don't go after their market. Don't go after and come into Germany and say, okay, I'm going to be number one in e-commerce in Germany. But you can say there's going to be 3 more billion people coming online. And how are they coming online? Mobile only, of course. And these are people that I know, that I can go after. That is moonshot thinking. You can come away with twice the market cap and size of an Amazon with that kind of thinking. That is where we need to go as entrepreneurs. That is the opportunity for us. Not to try to go back into that crowded pool I showed in the beginning, but to try to find the new green field. And yes, it's hard. And yes, you might get some crazy stares from some VCs who say to you, that's insane. But that's okay, because there will be that VC who will say, I want to back you. And more important than the VC is the human capital. You will get those people who will be attracted to you only because you have the big vision. Only because you say, we're going to moonshot this. They will then join you. The best engineers, the best creative minds, the best UX designers, they will want to join the bigger, bolder vision. That is what we now know from data. That is what's happening right now. Thank you very much.